Well, welcome everyone to our panel discussion. It's about reuniting families, and the focus is on what we can do and what best practices or new ideas we have that will help the children of incarcerated parents and the parents to be able to keep the lines of communication going, with the hope that at some point down the road they'll be reunited and will be able to build upon the relationship that they've already been able to start and continue creating. My name is Heather Fitzenhagen. I'm a state representative. I serve in the Florida House of Representatives and represent the city of Fort Myers and a big chunk of Lee County. So I'm very, very pleased to be here. I've had an opportunity to work with Barney Bishop and Smart Justice on a number of issues, and I was delighted to be included today. It's a great honor to be here, especially given that I am here helping to moderate a very distinguished panel of people that have a plethora of knowledge and skills and experience in this area. So without further ado, I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and I'm going to start with Wayne first.
I'm Wayne Rollins. I'm the developer and lead consultant for the Miami-Dade Anti-Gang Strategy and the reentry consultant for the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida.
My name is Raul Benasco. I'm the jail chief in Bexar County Sheriff's Office in San Antonio, Texas. But prior to that, 29 years in corrections. Started my career in New York, did 20 years here in Florida running prisons, then went over to the Orange County Jail and Osceola County Jail, and then had 2 amazing years working with Bridges of America, learned the reentry initiatives, and then went to work for the General in San Antonio 2 years ago.
My name is Shelley Solomon. I'm actually a criminal justice researcher who works mainly with police departments and state attorney and district attorney's offices on criminal cases. But through that work, I have taken on a management, I guess 8 years ago, a management lead of a program called the Service Network for Children of Inmates. It is a collaboration of grassroots, faith, and community organizations, 12 of them in the state of Florida, that is serving, I think we've served a little, right at 3,000 children. We're working in 12 correctional facilities in the state of Florida right now. So.
Gary Montgomery, co-founder of Living Stones International, a children and family outreach ministry. We work with families in crisis. We also work with the ex-offender population, also teen dads, and we are also a proud member of the Service Network, taking children in to visit their moms and dads who are incarcerated.
My name is Jeffrey Johnson. I am president of the National Partnership for Community Leadership. We are a research organization. We are a policy-oriented organization around issues pertaining mainly to men and fathers. I have also been very involved in prison ministry 25 years ago as a consultant to Prison Fellowship Ministry, some of you may be familiar with. I opened and oversaw its very first aftercare program for homeless, recently paroled men. So hopefully during the conversation, we'll hear about all the things that we all do.
Thank you very much. One housekeeping matter, which is if you have a question, I would be greatly appreciative if you would write it down on this piece of paper and have it slipped up to me so that I can make sure that I get your question answered properly for you. And I think what we'd like to do, and which would help frame it, is if we put it in a 30,000-foot viewpoint about what we're dealing with, and then drill down a little bit in some of the things that we are seeing that are working, some that are problems. And I'd like to ask Wayne to begin by giving us some statistics, if you will, on what is the overarching nature of the problem that we have.
Okay. How much time is that?
Well, I'll cut you off, Wayne. Go ahead. Feel free.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
First, I would want to express my appreciation to our moderator and all of you distinguished guests that are here today. We appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the Smart Justice movement. Reuniting families left behind. I would like to first explore this definition of families. America is rapidly abandoning marriage. In the early 60s, it was not unusual for young men and women to be virgins up until their wedding night. Those days are gone for most Americans where virginity is lost before entering high school, and there's no longer any shame associated with being unmarried and having children. According to the Pew Research Institute's report on the decline of marriage, 72% of African American women who had babies were not married, 53% of Latinas were not married, and 29% of white women were not married. This breakdown of the family structure has led to multiple social and economic challenges. It takes two to make a baby, and there are men that boast about how many children they have, but when it comes to how many of those children live with them, you'll get a disappointing answer. Some women have no idea who their baby's daddy is due to the multiple intimate relationships that they are involved with, sometimes more than one in a night. And there are unmarried girls in their preteens having babies and becoming grandmothers in their mid-20s. While working as the director of Weed and Seed in Liberty City, we would often go on outreach, and we went to one abandoned building where we found a squatter family. There was a 25-year-old woman there, and I asked her what was her name, and she said, Broken Down. I said, what? I said, why do you say that? She says, because we keep losing. And so I looked over to the side, and she was with her 12-year-old daughter. And the 12-year-old daughter was pushing the baby carriage with the grandchild of the 25-year-old. And they were living in this abandoned building with iron grating and bullet holes. And the father's nowhere to be found. Part of this was the result of the welfare system, where you are continually rewarded by having more children out of wedlock and not keeping a father around. So that's why you find so many of these children being born without any father being present. How am I doing?
You're doing fine.
Okay.
You're doing fine. I'm going to send a little latitude.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So what is the family structure that we're talking about reuniting? If a single mother has to work 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet, at 3 o'clock when the children are released from school, who is there to take care of them? The grandmother. And very often it is the grandmother taking care of the children, or they put them in an aftercare program, or the older siblings take care of the younger siblings, which can lead to abuse and neglect in some cases. The prisons and the jails are filled with young people whose fathers are absent. In 2012, I visited the Indian River Correctional Institution where the children that are bonded over as adults, convicted as adults, were being held. And out of 17 boys, were the toughest kids in the institution, children in the institution, only 3 of them had their mother and father at home. So we're not talking about, the typical families that we're talking about reuniting. So what is the structure of those families that we're actually trying to reunite? After incarceration and during incarceration, many returning citizens unfortunately bring that prison culture back to Florida communities. Men who do not call themselves gay, but have consensual, intimate relationships in prison or rape other men. Meanwhile, at home, their baby's mama continues multiple relationships with one man that takes care of the light bill, one man that takes care of the rent, and so on. And sometimes the children living in the home are compromised sexually or emotionally. The latest on the street is that the girls in the mid-20s and early 30s are now taking care of the teenage girls in lesbian relationships for economic reasons. The young teenage girls are going to them because the men are nowhere around or they're so irresponsible. So they're turning to the 28 women. I'm almost finished.
Well, okay, all right.
1 minute?
Yeah, let's
Half a minute?
close it
Yeah,
out
let's
strong,
close it
man.
out.
Let's
Okay,
go.
strong.
All right.
So what is the family structure that we're talking about reuniting? The point here is that the family structure we once knew is broken. The challenges are acute and require comprehensive strategies in order to adequately address them. There's no panacea. There's no one-size-fits-all. You'll hear about great programs that the people that are to my right have, and they are doing amazing things. So the question then becomes, how do we adequately assess the needs of those families that are left behind that we're trying to reunite, and what are the comprehensive solutions that we can offer and sustain Because very often we have programs that require funding and they're being delivered, but they have come to an end when the funding is delivered. But the lives of these families that we're trying to unite doesn't end there. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. I think that gave a perfect introduction to the problem that we have. Having said that, we have some folks here that are working in places that they're crafting solutions or small parts of the solution. One of the things that I was struck by first was when you, I'm going to say this wrong, it's not Chief, it's Chief Benasco. I always get those titles wrong. Chief Benasco was sharing what he had done in his current place of employment in Texas to try to make kids be able to have a better holiday. So that's one little thing, but describe what you were able to do for them.
Well, the sheriff has been in office 2 years now, and one of the things, she gives back to her community, and we have a high challenge with displaced children of the incarcerated. So we got together with the program staff and said, why don't we have a Christmas event and get gifts for the children of the incarcerated. And from a program perspective, it's great, but you know operation folks, they're like, oh my God, you know, why are we worrying about the inmates' children? I said, well, they're part of this community, and we, in the efforts with local partners, we were able to get almost 2,000 items donated. Great stuff from Xboxes, and we also bridged the gap also to the law enforcement side, that on Christmas Eve, they went into neighborhoods and they were giving out gifts out of the squad vehicles. And we had a huge Christmas holiday event on Saturday. We had almost 900 children of the incarcerated. And we had people in Santa Claus and in Texas, they love tamales, and we had a big meal. And it was their way of other kids who knew their parents were incarcerated to bond. We did it the first year, and we did it again this year, to the point that, believe it or not, our union donated $1,000 because it changed the environment with the inmates, because they never thought that the officers would care about their kids. And we also connected the piece with the parents, that we went ahead and said, send a note. And so even though they were incarcerated, they knew the event was taking place that day, but they sent a note to their child and sort of said, during the holidays, I know they're not here, but this is part of me by a message, and my administration and the leadership worries about the children, even though we're the inmates. So that was something we didn't think was going to take off.
And I think what was great about that is it helped on so many levels, because as Barney Bishop was stating, the real purpose is we want to try to break the cycle of the child becoming a person that's going to be incarcerated as well. So I think what you've done is a couple of things. You've connected the parent by letting them have that note. You've made them feel like they're still part of the community by having that gift and making them feel, you know, together with other children. And I think also from a law enforcement standpoint, you've gone out into the community and you've shown you're not the enemy. You're there, and we're all trying to do the same thing, which is live positive, safe lives. So I think that was a
And if I
great
could just add,
mission.
and those of you who heard our sheriff, she's quite the general, and she is fully committed. And all her direct reports or appointees were part of this event, and she was there the entire. It was like a 12-hour day because it was important, her being the chief of law enforcement of that county, that the kids saw that being a retired general of the ROTC program of the United States Air Force, she always made it, every one of my inmates, even though they're inmates, they're someone's child. And in my role as two-star general, I was entrusted with people's children throughout the United States. And even though I care for their parents, I need to let their children know that I care for them. And she takes that passion with her. And not too many sheriffs would take a whole Saturday to do that. So
Right.
she makes a commitment as well.
Thank you. Shelley, you are, you know, working on a daily basis with kids whose parents are incarcerated. What are some of the things that are you finding that they're facing, and how are you dealing with them?
We started from a research point of view when we started them, and no one who actually was in the original partnership knew anything about incarceration. None of us had been to a correctional facility or anything, has read it. And around the time we started, they came out with longitudinal research that said that children were at 3 times the risk of antisocial behaviors. This would be withdrawing, bullying, all kinds of antisocial types of things that they would do. They were at twice the risk of mental illness.
Do you have some slides of something that you could share with us, just so, because that way to put a face on these children,
And
I think
so-
is really important.
When we're working with these children, these are some pictures, they talk about it better than I do a little bit, as Sam moves us along here. He's trying to.
And what ages did you, did you do the research on? Was it all from,
It's from prenatal to 19.
Okay.
So, anyway, he'll work on the pictures, but what we're finding when we work with the kids is that they are tracking these statistics, that we are finding, we do self-report surveys on every single, we take the kids 4 times a year, we do self-report surveys with them about their behavior and with their caregivers as well, and they are tracking these antisocial behaviors. When they enter the program, they are demonstrating that they are engaged in these behaviors. And then in terms of the mental illness, I think the thing that's been the most shocking is the degree of which these children are suffering. And as a researcher, it's been educational to me, because I think research, we go in and we take a snapshot, right? You interview them, you're with them, you get this, but they don't tell you. But when you're with them over a long period of time, it really starts to come out. And the level of mental illness, and I'm not talking like a little bit sad, we're talking major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, paranoid schizophrenia, right, that we're seeing is indeed higher among these children than we're seeing in the after-school programs that our partners are running. And even little kids, little kids who are suffering from depression. We now have one of our MSWs is certified in infant mental health.
and you take a holistic approach with your kids, don't you, in terms of like a sort of a team analysis and team working with them to try to help them to benefit and cope with the dysfunction in their family?
Yeah, we basically do 3 main things. One is that we do wraparound care coordination. So we will go in and do direct assessments, psychosocial assessments with the child and with the family after we built a little bit of trust. And then if they need shoes, we're getting them shoes. If they need a therapist, we're getting them a therapist. If they need a doctor, which we're finding in a lot of cases, they just need a flat doctor, we're getting them a doctor. And then some of them, they need a buddy. That's what, almost all of them need a buddy. So, we're trying to find mentors and people that can hang out with them. So in that sense, it is a wraparound. The other thing that we're doing is we've recognized that incarceration is a root cause of a lot of these problems for these children, and that they don't understand what's going on with their parents. And even at a very young age, they just want to understand that their parent is safe and that they didn't do it. And what happened? Why did their parent choose this? And they need to be able to hear that from their parent. They cannot hear it from us. They need to hear it from their parent.
Well, I think, Wayne started off with the concept that this really stems in a large degree because we have a broken family system, or the family system that we have now. Let's, at a best case scenario, not call it broken, but it's definitely different than it was many years ago. So with the new landscape that we have for families or, familial units, I was going to ask you, Doctor, if you could expound on what you're doing with the gentlemen and your families and how you're helping dad's parent and mom's parent and how that's working.
Well, first of all, let me say, I think it's very important to also say that associated with these health issues is also poverty. That kind of contributes to a lot of the parent functioning and what happens in that household. I think the other part of it is that that my work has tended to focus on where the parents are. Understanding that if I had my way as a school superintendent, I would do more to keep kids in school and those type of things, and then we wouldn't have a lot of the problems that we have. Having said that, when the parents show up, a lot of the statistics that Mr. Rollins referred to are real. And they're real in the sense of, choices that folks have made, also in the context of what their love relationships are like and what they're not, and they got kids. All right, so what do you do with these parents to make sure that they're the best parents possible for these kids? And therein comes a lot of the interventions that I've been working with both moms and dads, teaching them how to be successful parents. And a lot of them have some idea about that, but they need guidance, they need structure, they need to know more about who they are, they need to know about communication skills, they need to know about what it's like to be the best mom, what it's like to be the best dad. They need to understand relationship dynamics. They need to understand how important it is to be healthy. And it's not like any of us go to parenting school, all right? But I think the thing is that a lot of times when we meet parents, parents are, they want to be the best they can, but they're also embarrassed by the fact that they can't be the best parent. And all type of crazy stuff happen when you don't think that you can meet that, that objective. I think that what we find is that that parent relationships, some of them are romantic, some of them are not. And so the question becomes, for the child's purposes, what is the best type of relationship you can have, given the fact that the mother and father are not married, not going to get married, he's with somebody else, she's with somebody else. And so the question becomes, but you have this child that you are unified around, what can we do to make sure that not as a gold standard measure, but as a measure that's going to at least put them in the situation where they can be the best parents possible. How can we prepare them to do that? Because without that intervention, he's going to go in another direction, she's going to go in another. They've been going in different directions, and they've not concentrated on what it takes for them to be in a co-parenting relationship around what's the best interest of that child. And then this requires not one entity, but a community collaboration. Many years ago, back in 1970s, there was a book out called The Boundless Resource. And it was talked about collaboration. And it talked about how collaborations form for the express purpose of making sure that we put ourselves in a position where we can help children grow and reach their highest potential. Not one entity can do that. The correctional system can't do it by itself. The school system can't do it by itself. Parents can't do it by itself. But together, we can pool our resources, we can pool our expertise, and we can direct those things towards what's the best interest of the children in that family and for society as a whole.
So we can really work towards the best achievable goal.
Yes.
Recognizing that we are living in a certain reality.
Right.
We have to.
People are not making decisions the way they used to, but again, I think that part of the strategy that we don't talk about a lot is the prevention side. We got to talk about prevention. And one of the things we're doing, and I don't want to belabor it too much, is that we're actually in 6 middle schools around the state of Virginia and the District of Columbia doing rites of passage programs. And so we're talking about the future of being a parent.
Does everybody know
we're
what that
talking
is,
about
Rite of Passage Program? Can you give a quick
what a rites of
synopsis?
passage program is a very intentional effort to give young boys in this context a sense of direction, a sense of purpose, and a sense of identity. I think that a lot of our young men flounder because they lack a sense of who they are.
And I can tell you that that is a fact in my experience, and it certainly makes a big difference that you're doing that.
That's right, and I can tell you, and we were able to do it in such a way that it's part of the school programming. It's part of the after-school programming. And I tell you, we've had, over the last 2 years, our attendance rate is off the charts. And the boys like talking about being a man, all right, because they get to talk about girls, but they get to talk about it in responsible ways.
That's awesome.
All right, and short of that, they're going to get it from the street.
Right.
All right, and so they talk about penises. They talk about, we have a health part. They talk about penises. They talk about vaginas or whatever. But it's talked about in a way that allows them to see themselves in doing things responsibly. That has to happen. And so as we think about our whole approach to this, it's not an either-or proposition. It's what we're doing and then some.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because all these, but I think that, in a strategic sense, we all got to be aiming at the same thing, and that is to create a household, where their children, where mother and fathers are working together, for the best interest of their child. You know what I mean? And so we got to be aimed at that way. But in those cases where it's not, we got to do other things like these prevention programs, rites of passage, those type of things, to in effect help provide a foundation for that child so they'll know to make some different choices,
Pastor,
than maybe their parents made.
Thank you. Pastor Montgomery, what are you working on right now that you're getting the best results from to be able to help these kids?
Through our, as a member of the service network, we arrange special bonding visits for the children on a quarterly basis to go into the prison to visit their moms and their dads. One of the things that we see that's very successful is about 6 to 8 weeks before the established bonding dates, we take a parenting program that we do with the men and the women. So we take them through anger management, communication issues, because there's some of the fathers haven't seen their children in 10 years or 5 years, or this might be the first time they see their child because they were 1 or 2 years or infants when they were born. So we work through those issues with those men and women to help during the time of the visit. At the same time, we reach out to the caregivers and the children. So we're interacting with the caregivers and the children to work with them. And just as you said, some of the men have burnt some bridges where the caregivers, they want to go visit the father child, but then they'll let the child go on their own. And we usually, our cutoff is like 3 years old or 4 years old, because I'm not changing no diapers. And so they have to be sufficient enough to be on their own, to be able to come in. And we'll assign a volunteer to go into the facility with them. So we find that because now we have inputted ourselves into that family, we're working with the caregivers. Some of those caregivers who have lost hope because of, when the father is gone or the mother's gone, the breadwinner is gone, and there's some benevolence needs that are there. So we've been able to help them. Some of them get jobs, go back to school, get involved with Workforce Plus, take assessment tests to see where they can, improve themselves. Also, one of the things we do, we coordinate for Representative Alan Williams' farm share. So we make sure that the children are fed. So we get involved with various services to make sure that they're there. So when we come time to bring those two entities together, then we have a successful bonding visit. At the same time, we also have an after-school program just for those children whose parents are incarcerated. And we found that, and we're blessed to be in an area where we have FAMU, or we have Florida State. So we have a lot of not only interns from MSWs, BSWs, but we also have a lot of volunteers from both universities who come in and help those children through their homework and schoolwork, and also through their personal development. So we have seen for the last 2 years that we've been doing the after-school programs from a child who was like this closed in, who's now starting to open up. And one of the things that I think that's important is that that the child is in an environment where children like themselves, where all of them who are in the same kind of situation, and they come to know each other because they go on visits together, or they know each other, so now they're comfortable in knowing that, we all have, a situation. So we find that through our volunteers being able to take those children out on special visits, or take them to the circus, or take them to the Tallahassee Museum, provide activities for them so that they know that they don't have to make bad choices.
What kind of tools are we able to give these children? Because you talked about they are able to, at some point, with your help, get together a small nucleus of people that are similarly situated, that have similar experiences, so that they can have someone they can relate to. But oftentimes that child is in a school where he or she is going to be a minority of a person that has an incarcerated parent. What tools can we offer them, or things, so that they aren't going to feel like they're stigmatized or bullied, or how do we address that so they don't lose their self-worth?
Well, one thing, from my perspective, I don't see where having an incarcerated parent is a stigma anymore, because all these kids have someone, either grandfather, uncle, or grandmother, somebody who they know is in prison. So it's not like it's like a real...
That begs the question, maybe then we need to point out that it's not okay to be there. I mean, we don't want them to feel bad, but we need to make sure that they understand that this isn't a behavior that is something we should, ignore.
That's the challenge right there.
Right.
But I think, my introduction of this way back when was whenever a little boy, he had written his goals, right? And he wanted to be an attorney at the end, right? And I'm doing this goal setting, but in his goals he was going to play JV football, he was going to play high school football, then he was going to go to jail, then he was going to go to college and play football, and then he was going to go and get his law degree. So I asked him.
Included at number 3?
He was 8.
Wow.
This was back when I was working with Wayland Project Safe Neighborhood.
Wow.
And I said to him, "What's law school about?" And he goes, "I want to get my dad out of jail, prison. I want my dad out." And I was like, well, what about this jail thing? And he said, everybody in my family has to go to jail. Mama went to jail, auntie went to jail, brother went to jail, so I got to do it. And I said, you know, you don't have to do that. He took his Crayola, he marked it out, and he said, thank you, you just saved me a lot of time.
But I would just say, we're not talking to our kids about this.
Right.
You know what I mean? And, you know, in these kind of settings, you know, think about it. We don't talk about these things at the YMCA. We don't talk about it at the Boys Club. You're certainly not talking about it on the street. So, you know, so we got to create these formal opportunities where you can have those conversations so you can say what you said. You know what I mean? Because kids don't know. They're confused. You know what I mean? They're confused.
I'm confused.
You know, and I think that as a society, and what we can't do, we can't be anesthetized to it. In other words, you know,
Right.
that's where this teacher training
Exactly.
comes in.
Exactly.
You know, teacher training. You know, for example, you know, teachers are being trained in Wisconsin to do this. You know, to tell kids who they know, because they know they fill out the they see, you know, who's in that school. They talk to kids and say, you're not alone in that. Which is not condoning what their parents are doing, but basically say you're not alone. As you said about your program, they're interacting with other kids, and so what that does is support. You know what I mean? And so around those, a lot of them, since they share the same experiences, it's good to have. You know, to know that you're not by
Right.
yourself in that regard.
But that they have the
That's
power
right.
to make a different choice.
But and that is not their parents. It's not, their fault. All
Right,
right. Because
right.
here's the thing. I'm going back to something what Lori said. The parents coming back. They're coming back.
Right.
And so in other words, you know, how do we teach the kids that their parents is coming back, because they are coming back, and to get them ready for the comeback? You had a very good slide. Can he show that slide? Yeah. Okay. But anyway, it's when a child has never saw their child or saw their father, and they meet. In it, you know, in the very beginning, there's some apprehension and ambivalence, but over a 2-hour period, the child starts looking at their father, and at the end, they're hugging because, you know, call it the blood. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But I think that we have to create situations where we can talk to kids and talk to them. Most of the research says that kids should know very directly that their parents are incarcerated. Don't hide it.
And
all right?
statistically, you
But be
said
humane about it.
that the parent, regardless of whether they're incarcerated or not the perfect parent, that parent or set of parents is the number one influencer.
Number one influence
of those
of
children.
any other family form, step
Right.
parents included. And I'm not trying to cast aspersions on step parents, but the research is very clear that there's that decent, and I mean decent, legal, you know, maybe made some mistakes, but decent parents, and if a child knows they're decent parents, biological parents, that those parents have the greatest influence
Right.
over the life choices of that child at the early age.
Chief, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, and I think some material I recently read, it's about 1.5 million children across the United States who either has one or two parents incarcerated. But I think also we have to be realistic. The media, you think
Right.
about it, you know, those of us who were in jail operations, I did prison, but how often you put that TV on, or that child who's home, and how they see the jail operations or the arrestee or the bolos. I mean, and those children in those environments that they're challenged, they come from neighborhoods that are not the best, they tend to say, wow, I saw my friend's mom, they're out looking for him, or the dad. But you know, the criminal element and the criminal justice system is thrown in front of them, often between commercials.
Right.
And so that also brings it into play. So it's like we all say, giving them a support mechanism
Right.
to understand that these things happen now, and it's more publicly recognized. It's more like a norm now. You go to the grocery store and you see so-and-so wanted. I mean, you think about it, when I was growing up, I never saw that. I mean, but now the correctional environment, the judges, how people get convicted, it's part of the media.
Right.
And it doesn't help society, especially the children.
And that's a good segue into something I wanted to touch on, which is the technology and how there's a nexus between technology and communication. Because communication is clearly one of the key elements to being successful in creating that bond, so that when the parents do come home, that they can continue to talk. It runs the gamut. I know you all have different experiences. Some have used the FaceTime or the TV and the video conferencing. Some people have to wait in lines. Share, if you will, some of the personal experiences, how you've been able to skin the cat of communication, if you will.
And I can mention in my jail in San Antonio, the average family gets there at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they wait in line for 6 hours to get a ticket. And the average time is 8 hours to get one 20-minute visit. So if you think of that on a cold day, on a heat day, I have to provide water because they're getting bee stings, the children out there with their grandparents. So
They're not working.
They're not working, they're losing a whole day's of work. So now we're going to video conferencing, which is a big thing for the jail operations because we'll be able to increase the visits. We're taking off-sites. They don't see our officers in uniform. It's going to be in a child-friendly environment where there's an area for the kids to come in and engage themselves. We're going to have a kiosk over there where the family members could put money into their inmate's account, as well as the system's very automated that if I want 3 visits, but I put me on a pending queue, an hour before that visit you're waiting, it might say, send you a text, if you can get to the video visitation in 10 minutes, you can have an extra visit. And this way you're not spending 8 hours away from work, it's a 2-hour visit, and you can have more communication with the loved ones. And that's some of the things that I know in jail operations we're being very creative, because it's about continuing that communication, and we're not charging. If you keep the current on video visitation for jails, it is a source of revenue. Some counties are charging up to $15, $20 for 15 minutes. In our county, here in Florida, Orange County, Palm Beach, they don't charge because it's about continual communication. So when they get out, they can continue in some form, some type of relationship.
Right.
But I do
Yes.
think that in the midst of the technology, because I would call it, we need to create positive visitation experiences. You know what I mean? And so, and I think that as someone said in the last session, it's a balance. It's a balance between the video meeting and parents actually have an opportunity to feel and touch their children when at all possible. Not in every circumstance, but I think that we need to do that. And also, I think we need policy reform. We can't leave that off the table because some of these things just need to be reformed. You know what I mean? Because you're already poor, you're in jail. All right, taxpayers paying $35,000 a year. All right, or more to keep you in jail, and then you get a phone bill, and the phone bill is keeping your relatives away because they can't afford it. All right, and then the location of where prisons are. I know it's security, but a lot of times when a family finds out that a family member has moved to another facility, it's after that person has been placed there, and that may be in another part of the state. And so we got to figure this thing out. I just think that what I'm happy to see is that we're having the dialogue to share the different experiences and that type of thing. And we're going to need these things. We're going to think about some other things because at the end of the day, we got to create a better environment and a better situation for our kids. This is what this is all about.
Can you want to share a success story, perhaps you share about a child that has been able to take advantage of some of the services and the wraparound that you've been, that's had a positive outcome, that is doing well?
Oh, God, we have a lot of.
Well, that's right.
No, we have. I would just say on the video visitation, we have both, and the contact. You gotta have both because the kids need to touch their parents.
Yeah.
But in terms of outcomes, some of our kids have been with us for going on 8 years now. So we go every quarter. They've gone on every visit, some of them. So they spend 3 hours times.
That's great. So you can really track their progress and the relationship.
But when you think about it as a parent, we're talking about a matter of hours. That's all they've gotten is a matter of hours because 42% of our kids hadn't seen their parent until we took them, right? But in a couple of the cases, one of the kids, he's been with us. He's a big kid. We used to pick him up. I used to pick him up too, and he has had various little girlfriends that are in the program throughout the program, right? But the other day I was talking to him. I didn't go on his visit. Both his mother and father were incarcerated, and they said they were there, and they're like, "My God, D grew up. He grew up. He's a man now. He's going to culinary school." And I was like, "He grew up because he started when he was 12." Another one of the girls, she has been with us the whole time. Her father's in for life. She told me in the car when she was about 14, she said, the thing that makes this the hardest for me is I'll never have ice cream with my dad. I can never have an ice cream cone with my dad. And that really struck me and struck us, right? And we went back and we worked on it. And for her, she was going off to college, and we finally figured out how to get ice cream on our visit. And so we took dry ice and packed the ice cream and took it into the facility so that she could have a Cold Stone moment with her father,
Oh,
which
that's
is what
so
she
great.
wanted. But she's going to school now. So it's, I think sometimes we overthink it.
I do too. I
Right.
do too.
It's just the simplest little things
Things
that
that touch
make
you in your
these
heart.
children.
Well, listen, I don't think that I can say anything but, fabulous things about this panelist, and I hope if you'll give them a huge round of applause. These people have worked really hard for this.